Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special Transport Evolved live stream. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and over there we have the wonderful...
I'm Winter Tashlin.
Hey, Winter. How are you today?
It's a day. I've been packing up my house, and that's a little stressful.
A little stressful.
I'm going to be meeting my boss for the first time in like not even 24 hours. So that's
24 hours time. I know it's... just be nice. Bosses generally are overrated, it should be said. So, good morning, everybody, if you're watching this. That very strange opening there was the fact that Winter, who is one of our contributing presenters here at Transport Evolved, has a road trip that he has to make. Because, Winter, you are moving.
I am moving. I am moving from Portland to Portland, which at first blush doesn't sound like that big a deal, except that those two Portlands are separated by over 3,000 miles.
Yeah, it's a long way, isn't it? It really is quite a distance between Portland and Portland. So
I'm looking at the chat, by the way. Apparently there's a delay between our audio and video, which is a bit
weird, and it's working fine for us. So I apologize. Look, okay, is it too early to start razzing on is it too early to start razzing on YouTube?
Is it ever too early for that? I mean,
maybe.
I mean, I was trying to check the live stream on my phone so I could see comments, and I can't see the live stream at all. I can only see the comments, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on there.
All right, so this is the trip that you have to make, going from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, and obviously I like little arc. I like the little arc there, just as 7 hours and 25 minutes, by airplane. That I will admit, that does feel like a slap in the face next to, because of course we're looking at this and it says 47 hours. Well, that's 47 hours if you cannonball in a petrol car, and
right,
I am not cannonballing and I'm not in a petrol car, so it's going to take a lot longer than that.
And you are like me. You are of a point in your life where you've done the fast, furious stuff, and it's now time to take things a little more serenely. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, I'm old. I mean, if that's what you were driving at, I'm a
no, bit... you're not. You're not old. You're not old.
I'm a middle-aged man, but my days of doing
I'm still 20. I don't care what you say.
My days of doing hardcore cannonballs are just over. Like I've got a busted neck and sleep apnea and diabetes. I'm not sleeping in a car to get my rest breaks before I get back behind the wheel. I'm just not doing it. Give me a bed.
It is weird. People are complaining that we are 8 seconds behind. So apparently the audio has now got better. So we'll keep going. I apologize. Just to razz on YouTube, which is what we were thinking about a second ago. YouTube has caused so many troubles for us this week. It has not transcoded a 4K video that we uploaded to 4K. And in case you're curious, when you upload a video to 4K, in 4K to YouTube, YouTube then retranscodes it using its special transcodey thing that is much lower quality than anything that you actually uploaded. And sometimes its render farms get stuck on your video. And I've had one of my videos rendered in 144p before. Like, I uploaded it in 4K.
Frustrating. Which is frustrating when you have put up with the time commitment of exporting a 4K video and then uploading a 4K video, which takes forever. And then they're like, cool, thanks for that. Sorry it took 4 hours to upload. Here's your video in 144p. Congratulations.
Yeah, and it takes an hour and a half for me to upload most 4K videos that we make. When we do a car review, it's a couple of hours. couple of solid hours.
Yeah.
Then we had YouTube. We've been uploading our videos, and ever since someone asked us to, we've been putting subtitles when there's a script. We've been putting a subtitle in our video, and for some reason, the subtitles are not getting published as we're asking YouTube to. They're getting transcoded into Russian.
Yep, saw that today. That was weird. I was like, I promise we did not upload a Russian script. None of us speak Russian.
I mean, it's just the weirdest. So, and obviously audio video issues with YouTube is becoming the norm. A lot of people say, and sorry, I'm taking time out to talk about this in the stream, but a lot of people have asked, why are we still on YouTube? We are still on YouTube because we bring in money from YouTube, because we bring in ad revenue. And unless our audience wants to step up to the plate and start giving us an extra $3,000 to $6,000 a month to help us continue to make content, we can't afford not to be on YouTube, because that's where a lot of our income comes from. So
and
unfortunately, that's the way it is.
It is still where people go to find new content creators also. Like, right. That's also, I mean, that's one of the things that YouTube is for. I mean, we criticize because it's our job, and it's frustrating when stuff gets messed up. But I have to say, like, 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, this would still seem like hardcore science fiction stuff. So we do still have to take with a grain of salt that we are currently talking to each other and an audience live from our personal computers from 3,000 miles away, and neither of us, I think, have our personal computers plugged into a wall in terms of like carrying data. At least I'm on a laptop. Like, all of that is unbelievable.
Yes, it
even is. Like 15 years ago.
So I mean, for those who are nerdy, I have a 10 gigabit network connection. Our house is flood wired. We bought the house, we had it flood wired. We don't trust wireless connections unless it's just a laptop.
All routing to a Wi-Fi relay network, though. I mean,
all routed to a Wi-Fi down the valley to our local rural ISP. Because when we stream, we have to use that, because Starlink is too unreliable for that. It's great for downloads, great for speed, but not reliable enough for streaming. Anyway, the TLDR is it's not our fault. We're trying to work with YouTube, and unfortunately, YouTube ignores us because we're just another cog in its money-making machine. I'm sure we'll get demonetized now and shadow banned for this, but let's talk about this trip. So you have decided to move from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon. Why?
Well, I just felt like Portland, Maine wasn't on fire enough for me. So, of course, I had to move. No, we have talked about moving out west for a very long time. It's something that we've considered. And then when I got the job with Transport Evolved, it was like, well, that's sort of a sign from the universe that it's time to buckle down and do that. And also, like, 12 years in Maine, neither of us are from Maine. It was time for something new. And what could be more new than moving to the other side of an entire continent?
Well, I mean, moving halfway around the world.
Fair point. I am talking to the wrong person about that. Because you definitely took that a step farther. But no, I can't handle Maine winters anymore. You and I had a conversation in which I asked about the snow in Portland, and you said, we get about 15 inches. And I said, I can deal with that, but how often do you get 15 inches? And you said, like, every winter. And I was like, yeah, but how often?
No, I mean, that's 15 inches in where I live. Right, it's not 15 inches in Portland.
To me, 15 inches is a moderate snowstorm.
Yeah.
And to you, it's a winter cumulative total. And the coldest temperature I've ever experienced personally was 22 below zero. And then I've experienced a 40 below zero wind chill. And I physically can't hack it anymore.
Yeah.
And when you are queer and when you have a partner who's trans, like, the number of states in America you can actually move to and have full legal protections actually isn't all that much. And most of them are as cold and snowy as where I am now, or are outrageously expensive to live.
Right.
They were like, we only had 17 states to choose from out of 50 to begin with. And like, I have friends in Minneapolis. I think Minneapolis is an awesome city. I've spent time in Minneapolis. I didn't really want to move to Minneapolis if the snow and cold in Portland, Maine has been a problem for me.
Right. So, I mean, where you're moving to, which is the metro area, and I think I want to leave it at that for your safety and security as much as anybody else's. You're probably going to get maybe 2 inches of snow a year. So, for you in the Portland metro area, you're going to get 1 or 2 inches. I live out in the Tualatin Mountains, which is at 850 feet where my house is. And so we get 2 or 3 good, maybe 4 good snow events every year. And that's why we get 12 to 15 inches a year. But it's funny because I can get up in the morning and there can be heavy snow on the ground, get in my car, drive down the hill. By the time I get to 500 feet, which is probably a mile from my house, that's a dusting. And by the time I get to the bottom of the hill and the nearby town that shares the name where I live, there's no snow at all.
It was like that when I lived right by the ocean. Before I lived in the house I live in now, I lived in an apartment in Old Orchard Beach, Maine, and I could hear the ocean from my window. And we would oftentimes get rain, and then you'd go inland, a few miles, and you'd be like, oh, they got hit with 20 inches of snow.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about this, Matt.
Lots of opportunities to move. And
you've decided to move, and initially, obviously, you have a Tesla Model 3, you have some motorbikes, you
had some motorbikes. The motorbikes are gone. We're going to do new motorbikes when we get out west.
Right. And you have a dog.
I do have a dog.
And you decided to keep your Chevrolet Bolt EV for now. If you haven't watched the video that Winter discusses, where he discusses why he's keeping the Bolt for now, because you've been thinking about the buyback, you got a buyback request, they gave you an offer which wasn't very good.
So I don't want to be critical of GM. I bought the car used for 19 grand. I've put about 5,000 or 6,000 miles on it, and they offered me 18.2. It was, as I said in the video, it was a fair offer. It was not a generous offer. I know people who've gotten generous offers on buybacks, and that wasn't it. And if you want, I'm still buying a car based on my personal experience in Maine, and I understand that doesn't translate great to Oregon. So I wanted a car that I could do, in winter time. And I think of winter time, I think it's 10 degrees outside, that I could do a good 120 miles, easily and have juice in the tank. And there just weren't a lot of options in that regard. I mean, your place and my place are not around the corner from each other. So I know that I'm going to be driving out to your place to film, at least in the beginning.
I think Erin, who actually, again, that's another reason why we're not discussing exactly where you're moving to, because Erin and you are actually going to be fairly nearby each other, about a mile from each other. And I think Kit is moving to a similar kind of location as well. So for those who don't know, Kit, our social media guru, is also moving to Portland this week.
Now, in fact.
Right now, on the road. So if the social media has been a bit weird this week, it's because Kit's on moving duty and hasn't had a chance to do a whole lot. But I know that Erin has said that to get to mine is about 20 miles. So it's about a 40-mile round trip.
Yeah, so I was thinking about, a lot of people recommended these EVs that were, 70 miles, 80-mile range. And I'm thinking, in the wintertime, I'm not going to be able to round trip to the studio on a charge without having to stop and charge. And that was something I did not want. And at the moment, we got some question about why, if we have electric motorcycles, didn't we just go down, or, may have an electric motorcycle in the future, why not go down to a car and a bike? And that is that my husband, although he rides, he is not nearly as experienced a rider as me. And he was not in a place where he was like, I'm going to be happy taking a motorcycle to work. And because I'm a photographer, in addition to my work with Transport Evolved, there are times I need to haul a fair amount of stuff. I mean, I already have a photo shoot lined up in Seattle. And you can't carry a photo shoot's worth of stuff easily on a motorbike.
I mean, it's the same for video work, right? So to come to you, I have don't know if you can see, I have a camera bag behind me that's full of GoPros. Literally, it's got seven GoPros in it, plus all the batteries for the cameras that we've got. We've got a flight case, a Pelican flight case downstairs, which will be oversized and overweight. We've got a gimbal, we've got wireless microphones, we've got a bag full of extras for your car, which we'll come to in a second. But all of this, I mean, talking to my partner about flying out there, she'd got in her head it was just going to be one camera and, you know, a bag of clothes and we'd be good. No, I'm sorry, the car is going to be full. So
yeah, so I mean, we looked at when we knew we might be keeping the Bolt, we looked at a bunch of options of how to get both cars out west. And the immediate thing I went to was an auto shipper. And the reality was that shipping the car is quite expensive and has quite a carbon footprint. So, I mean, we were looking, if we were content getting the car eventually, we were looking at somewhere between like $1,500 and $2,000. If we wanted the car within like a month of the car shipping out, or even within 3 or 4 weeks shipping out, that you could double that if you want it guaranteed. And if you wanted the car enclosed, which I didn't care about, I mean, in fairness, I bought this car from Vroom, so this car started in California and came out to me by truck, and it did arrive looking like it had been roving Mars in terms of how dirty it was.
Gosh.
So I mean, I briefly thought, like, what if I put it in an enclosed trailer? And then I realized that I could buy a Nissan Leaf for what that was going to cost, a used
right. One. So then I kind of reached out to you and said, "Hey, Winter, what if I come out to you and drive your car back? I think this would make a great video."
And I mean, I thought you were absolutely out of your mind, but I wasn't going to say no. I mean, if you want to fly to Maine, and I do want to point out, we had some people who are concerned about the carbon cost of Nikki and Kate flying out. And if you look at that compared to throwing my car onto a truck, it actually comes out, better to drive my car out, having flown on relatively efficient, commercial passenger jets than trucking my car out west.
So let's deal with that. Someone said they're no longer going to watch our channel and they're going to basically say bad things about us because we're flying. And a couple of people said, well, why didn't you take a train? So
those people are not American.
So let's redo this, okay? So for us to take we could take a bus.
Which is not better on carbon, really.
Which is flying, not really better on carbon. Or we could get a train, and I think it's showing me bus options right now. But if we did it with a train, we'd be looking at about 80 hours.
I have a friend who did it not that long ago, and it's very, very, very expensive as well. It takes forever, and it's very expensive. And it's important to remember that American trains mostly run on diesel.
Right. And someone said the sleeper on the Amtrak is nice. It is. You can get a ticket from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine for about $250, which is significantly less than what we paid for the flights.
Because of when you're flying.
Because it's July 4th weekend. So yeah. I'm going to say I had to spend a significant amount of money to come out to you. And obviously we're going to have to pay a couple of $100 in overage charges for luggage. But we're flying with an airline that I know is very good about the efficiency of its planes. I have not flown for nearly 2 years. And just as a reminder, when Transport Evolved gets a chance to go somewhere by car, we do, if we can make it work. So when we go to Las Vegas for CES, we drive. When we went to Fully Charged Live in Austin, Texas, we drove. And there's also, how do I put this? Certainly when you take a coach, coaches are not necessarily the safest things to be traveling on if you are not a cishet person. Is that a fair thing to say?
I would agree, but then again, as a disabled person who has trouble with mass transit in terms of harassment, like, I mean, remember, I was once denied boarding to an airplane because of my disability. So, like, as a rule, all mass transit feels scary to me. But
Right.
no, I mean, as a not cishet person, like, yeah, being on a coach, not necessarily the safest thing in the world.
And I don't know if you're comfortable talking to this, but winter, kind of the challenge of flying as somebody with Tourette's must be quite challenging.
Yeah, it's not fun. You know, I happen to know that I'm legally protected by the Air Carrier Access Act, but the airlines don't always. And you, let's say it has been very advantageous for seatmates of mine because it's not unusual for the airline to offer a comp ticket in exchange for someone being willing to sit next to me, which doesn't feel great to me. But okay. And I do fly some for work. There are times when I need to fly, and there have been times in the past when I need to fly. It is not always practical to take a car when you live in a country that's quite as big as this one.
Yeah. And I've got to say that while I love flying, I tend to prefer driving again for that same safety thing. Especially since, Transport Evolved really took off and we're starting to travel with a lot of camera gear. When I go through security, I am always pulled aside. It's become a bit of a joke. I don't know if it's because of my appearance, but I am constantly pulled aside.
You can imagine security takes extra time to talk to me. I was actually just on a podcast about Tourette, in which I talk about this. But yeah, I was online when I'm online at the security line for an airport, to get into the secure area. The TSA agents always come to talk to me, and it's always entertaining, the ones that try to pretend that they're not talking to me because I'm barking like a dog. And I had this agent once, because they have their list of 20 questions they're going to ask no matter what. And I had an agent who was grilling me about where I was going and why I was traveling and who I was traveling with, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, don't you want to ask me about the barking like a dog thing? And the agent said, oh, I hadn't noticed. And the person behind me online leaned over and went, really? That's what you're going with?
That is funny. That is funny.
So I mean, having the Bolt out of the equation has greatly eased this trip planning process for Owen and I, but it is still a daunting prospect. And it's interesting, in the comments on our YouTube videos, people often talk about the fact that the Model 3 is a great road trip car and the Bolt is not a car you can road trip at all, which obviously isn't true. People have cross-country Bolts many times. Someone recently cannonballed a Bolt, which sounds like a nightmare to me, but it's doable. They are both cars you can take cross-country. And to be clear, we are not doing this as a race. We're going to make this really clear on many occasions. This is not a race, because as a race, the Tesla would win. There's really no question about that. It has 310 miles-ish of range, and it can charge at up to 200 plus kilowatts. Although I will say there's actually very few V3 superchargers on my route. But even so, I mean, 120 kilowatts of charging versus 55. There's no question that the Tesla is going to do this faster and easier. The point of the trip and the videos is talking about the experience, not necessarily contrasting to see which is better. Though we haven't done it, I suspect there are going to be things that are going to be more challenging in the Tesla, and I'm certain there'll be things that are more challenging in the Bolt, having road tripped both a Tesla Model 3 and done long road trips in 50 kilowatt CCS cars. I once did Portland, Maine to Darlington, Maryland in a BMW i3, and I did that round trip. It was an i3 Rex, my beloved Tully, and for that entire trip, it's over 1,000 miles round trip with the other stuff I did on the route. I used 5 gallons of gas on the range extender. That was it. Everything else was DC fast charging stops, and that car did not have a ton of range on batteries alone. It was 2014. So I mean, like, I know what road tripping CCS cars is. I road tripped the Kona quite a bit. I've road tripped the Bolt some. But if I have a choice, I road trip to Tesla, unless there isn't Tesla charging where I'm going.
All right. So I've just popped in Portland,
56
Maine,
hours and 26 minutes
to Portland, Oregon. And just for people asking why it was taking so long, obviously I've done the road trip. I've already got all of my days. It's going to take me 7 days. We're taking a little bit of extra time because you want to stop and see some things. And I'm logged in. I've logged out of all of my accounts. So this, like, a Better Route Planner, which is the tool that we've used primarily for this, certainly on my end, keep saying, oh, I want to know where you live, or can I use your location? And of course, I don't really want that on here. So I'm like, no. So it keeps up doing that. So this is with a long range rear wheel drive, which is what you've got.
Yep. No, it's the older one. It's the 2018, and things have changed a little bit since they went to the new long ranges.
So if you left today at 1:30 p.m. local time, which is now, you would get, according to this, to Portland in Oregon 56 hours later. So what would that be? That would be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, sort of Tuesday evening local time. But that is, as you say, that is literally charging, driving, charging, driving. And I don't know about you, but that's dangerous and no fun. And I think that's the other thing we wanted to talk about in today's route planning is every single motoring organization in the world, pretty much, recommends that you do not drive for more than 3 hours at a sitting. Some are like 3.5 or 4 hours. But the reality is 3 hours is about the limit of most people's concentration. It's one of the reasons why films tend to not be more than 3 hours long, unless you're Peter Jackson making Lord of the Rings.
Hey, when I was a kid, I remember films that had intermissions, just like going to live theater. And that's been totally done away with. But I appreciated that when that was a thing.
I still do. I mean, I watched a movie at the weekend for the first time since COVID, and I kept my mask on the entire time. But also, I kind of halfway through the movie, I was like, God, I wish I was at home. I could just go and have a pee and not miss any of the movie. And it was a subtitled Japanese anime as well, which makes it twice as hard because you can't really sort of keep your ear out as you head to the toilet and then, as you come back. So this is the route with a Tesla. Let's look and see what the same route would do with a Chevrolet, Bolt. People in the chat room, why don't you give me a guess here based on that? Oh, I have to go back this way. So a Better Route Planner is a great app. It's a little buggy.
It is not the most intuitive interface of any program I've ever used.
But it is a really good program for planning. It's very accurate.
Oh, yeah. Now, again, this is all based on sort of going without stopping overnight and charging overnight, which we're going to talk about in a bit, because Nikki and my overnight charging situations are very different on this trip.
Yep. And by the way, if you want to support this, this event, please feel free to put up a super chat or something like that. We're not gonna say no if you want to throw some support our way, because this trip is gonna cost us a couple of grand all in. But we are at least going to be able to make some videos out of it, which is one of the reasons we agreed to do it.
Yeah, we'll definitely get some fun content. And my husband has spent some time making a list of weird stuff to see on the way. So you might get to see Lee, Massachusetts giant beaver, for instance, although I'm kind of hoping I can go without seeing the giant beaver. But yeah, there'll be some stops to see random stuff. And I am being a very good spouse and not insisting that we stop and see every submarine that you can tour along the way. Hey, there we go. 76 hours and 37 minutes. This is why we're not doing this as a race.
Right. Okay. So if we did it as a race, my car would clearly lose, the car I'm driving, which happens to be the same as the car I'm, but the same as the car I own.
Yeah.
But it's the difference is your car is a 2017 Volt Premier with 40,000 on the clock.
Yep.
And I have a 2017 LT with 60,000 on the clock, and my partner Kate has a Bolt Premier with nearly 100,000 on the clock. And to be clear, we talked about Kate earlier. Just to clear everything up here, I'm not doing this with Kate Walton Elliott, the other British person on the channel. That's Kate Walton Elliott. I'm doing this with Kate, my partner, who I'm married to, who we call Americate. Thank you, Donald. Thank you. And it is going to be kind of fun because my wife and I have not been on vacation together since 2007. The last time we were on vacation together alone was when we went to Scotland to Ben Nevis together in 2007. And Pepper, our border collie, who unfortunately passed away last month, was a pup. Thank you, Jim. You're absolutely awesome.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. And so we're doing this as a holiday.
So this route is actually closer to the route that I'm probably going to take, because we made the decision that we're going to go through Colorado. Instead, you're going to go on an even bigger detour, but we made the decision that we were going to go through Colorado instead of Wyoming. You saw on the Tesla map that we could just cut across the bottom of Wyoming, and we decided that we were going to be within shouting distance of the mountains in Colorado, which I haven't been to in some time. My husband's never been to. It would be fun to take the car up through the mountains. And that is an area that's well served by supercharging stations. So we decided we were going to do that.
Well, I think this route is actually pretty close to what we're doing. So just kind of for clarity's sake here, tonight at about, in fact, in 11 and a half hours time, I will be on my way to the airport, which fills me with a sense of dread because 10 is filmed. We've got 2 other videos that I have to edit today. I've got 11 shorts that were filmed yesterday that I have to edit. The Volvo XC90 T8 video has not been done. I haven't had anything done to it yet.
You realize,
I'm hoping to
Nikki,
do some work on that today.
You realize, Nikki, that if you're running short on time, you can slap that stuff onto a hard drive because I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving yet. You can dump that with me and say, here, get this stuff.
Do a whole load of work.
Get this stuff edited and uploaded while I'm driving your car across the country.
We need a fundraiser to give Winter a full-time job, basically. We can't afford you full-time yet, but we really do need to get more money coming into Transport Evolved so that we can give. We've got 3 people on staff that I want to give full-time jobs to. Winter is one of them, Michael is another, and Kate is the third. And Kit, so that's 4 people. So we want to give them all full-time jobs, but at the moment that's not happening. So anyway, yes, I might do that, but in 12 hours time, just under, Erin is picking me up from my house and she's going to drive me and my partner Kate to the airport. We are going to fly overnight on a red eye. We're going to stop in Minnesota and then we're jumping to Boston, Massachusetts tomorrow. I think that's fair enough to say. I'm not saying where we're going to stay, but we have booked a hotel in the greater Boston area because, as you can see from this map, you have to go through Boston to carry on the trip. So Winter and Owen are going to drive down tomorrow morning in both their cars. Thank you, Anonymous Freak, to Boston tomorrow and meet us in Boston. Then they're going to drive back in their Tesla back to their house and carry on the horrible process of packing. And then on July 4th, Kate and I are going to leave Boston. Now, let's talk about some of the...
which is the right direction to be going on 4th of July in Boston, going out. That's, if you're going to be on the road in Boston on 4th of July, that's the way you want to be going.
Is this just because Boston does it, like Boston's really big on celebrating things?
So Boston tends to do a really big 4th of July celebration. Boston has a lot of big celebrations, but you also have to remember that of cities in America, Boston is one of the absolute worst for roads because as a teacher of mine once said, Boston never burned down. Most big cities in America at some point burned down or rebuilt as grids. Boston's roads are nightmarish. And Boston does a big thing for 4th of July.
Yeah, it does.
I have Anonymous Freak in the chat going, oh, July 4th in Boston.
See, I don't even know what the big deal here is. So let's talk about Better Route Planner and some of the functions here. So the first day, I don't think I mind saying this. The first day, we're heading to the Buffalo region. We're going to spend a day and go and see Niagara. I think that's fair enough to say. And just in case people are asking, no, we're not going to be sharing the route live stream. We're not going to be like real-time tweeting or real-time sharing our location. That's something I used to do and I used to be pretty okay with. But in recent years, we've attracted some negative attention when doing that. And for our own safety, especially considering some of the parts of America we're traveling through, we're not real-time sharing and we're not sharing where we're going to end up. So, but that first day we are going to go to Niagara because we've not seen Niagara before. I know that you guys are going to Niagara a couple of weeks later when you leave.
It is, yeah. I don't even, is it even really a couple? It's not even fully a couple of weeks. No, it is a couple of weeks because I have a job out here first. But yes, we're going to stop in Niagara because I have lived relatively close to it in the scheme of a, large continent and have never been. I don't think we're going to indulge as much there. I think we may just go like, hey, it's a big waterfall, and then keep driving, whereas I think you're gonna see the sights a bit.
We do want to see the sights, but there's also a potential video that we're trying to set up in
that's
Niagara.
Right. Yeah,
so we're going to do
awesome.
that. So let's talk about the Better Route Planner setting. So we can set fewer stops. We can say we want shorter legs. And thank you, Greg. And you've got the quickest arrival in the middle. So you've kind of got this triangle when it comes to EV charging, triangle that says more stops, faster speed, shorter charging stops. Now, you can also say you want to use real-time charging availability, but this is the something I really love. It's a new feature of Better Route Planner. Minimum number of charging stalls. You can say, I can add the right number, I only want to stop somewhere where there are 4 charging stalls. That gives me redundancy in case there's a problem with the charging network. 4 or more.
4 or more.
And when I get to my destination, I'm okay with a certain level of state of charge. Now, I know that the hotel we're staying at in Buffalo does not have rapid charging. So I want to arrive with about 50%. So I don't have to go and find a charging station that night. Charge a maximum state of charge. I don't really want to charge beyond 80% when I'm on the road.
No, because for people who may not be aware, with very few exceptions, those exceptions, as far as I know, all being made by Volkswagen Group, EVs charge rate slows down a lot by the time you hit around 80%. On my Tesla, you see it quite, you can be pulling really hard, and then right around, like, I find on the Tesla around 65%, you step down a bit. And then by like between 80 and 90 on the 2018 long range rear wheel drive is when it really starts to slow down, and you're just not getting that much. The Audi e-tron and Porsche Taycan don't do that, only because their actual battery capacity is so much bigger than the amount of battery available to the driver. Whereas both the Bolt and the Tesla Model 3, they have significant buffers on the top and bottom, but not nearly as dramatic. Audi was very clear when the e-tron came out that they deliberately built that enormous buffer because they felt that to people new to EVs, the experience of having the charge rate slow down would be confusing and upsetting. So instead of giving them more range, they emphasized faster charging. So on our cars, like, charging much past 80 just isn't going to make sense unless it's the only way to get to the next charging station.
So on the Bolt, a lot of people are asking, on the Bolt, I find once you get to about 60%, 70%, the charging curve starts to kick in and it starts to slow down. So really with the Bolt for a long distance trip, but I think it's true for most EVs, you really only want to charge to 60, 70%.
So
I put 80% here because I'm okay with that.
This will also be an interesting opportunity because you have road tripped Bolts a lot, but you've never road tripped a Chevy Bolt EV that had the final software update. And I'm seeing in the comments on our videos, some people saying that after the final GM software update, the charge ramping got more aggressive. So I'm going to be very interested to see how your charging experiences in Morden, my car, compare to your experiences in Artemis. Because
I've driven Artemis with the software, the temporary software fix. I've rapid charged her on a long distance trip.
Yeah, but not since the final fix was installed. So that's another thing that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
So when I'm setting preferences here, maximum charge, a state of charge is 80%, and then I can put in a battery degradation. I know your car is probably about 1.5. Whoops. So I'm going to say 2.
15's a whole different story.
And then charging overhead. Overhead time at every charge stop. A higher value here will lead to fewer but longer charge stops. I want to say about 15 minutes is probably all I'm comfortable with.
Can you elaborate? Can you elaborate on just what they mean by charging overhead? Because I've been a little bit vague about it.
Okay, so charging overhead literally means how long are you okay stopping here? Like, what do you consider the time that you need when you're stopped? So I'm saying when I stop to charge, I need about 15 minutes between stopping the car and plugging in and getting back in it. That's my kind of minimum. If it's any shorter than that, I really don't want to faff around plugging in. So 15 to 20 minutes, I'm okay with. In fact, let's just put it at 20 because that gives you enough time to go to the loo. We're going to be taking a camping stove with us because COVID is rampant in large parts of the interior states of the US because people are not getting vaccinated at a high enough rate. And while I do have vaccinations and you are vaccinated, and so are both our partners, I don't really want to put myself at risk or other people at risk. So I'm going to be doing what I've done in the past on road trips, which is stopping and making drinks at the side of the road and making food at the side of the road. We have cool bags, we have ice accessible to us. So about 20 minutes is about the time it takes me to go to the loo, grab a drink, and get back on the road. Adrian,
it would be
you are very generous. Thank you very much.
It would be great for that, Nikki.
What?
If the car had vehicle to load capability,
it would be awesome.
That you could plug in a little electric griddle or something would be really nice.
I do actually have an electric grill. That's the grill we have outside our house. We have an electric grill. All right, so we've got 20-minute overtime, and then you can tell it how you can use real-time traffic, which is a feature of the premium. I have real-time traffic. Obviously, I'm not logged in. You can say your reference speed, your minimum speed, or your maximum speed. In this case, I'm going to say we don't want to travel above 70. Road conditions.
I may have left mine at 85.
Right? You can do real-time weather, and you can also do extra weight. Now, I know I'm probably going to be extra 200 pounds on board because I'm going to be carrying some stuff for you.
Aren't you also going to be carrying another human being, though?
Another human, and I'm also going to be carrying a lot of extra stuff. So with that all taken into consideration, you can also say what your miles per kilowatt hour is. And I know I can fairly regularly achieve 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So let's type that all in.
On the highway in a Bolt?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I guess this time of year, that's about what I'm doing.
Yeah, at this time of year. I have a good friend of mine who has a Chevy Spark, and she hits regularly 6.5 miles per kilowatt hour.
I spoke to someone. I spoke to someone at Electric Auto Association meetup back before COVID, who had gone across about half the country. She had bought a Spark EV many, many, many years ago. She bought a Spark EV in like the upper Midwest and drove it to Maine, largely relying on like the kindness of strangers to let her plug in her granny lead, because there wasn't much in the way of DC fast charging infrastructure. Anonymous Freak asked, doesn't the Bolt have a 120 volt outlet in it somewhere? I keep thinking that it does or it should, but I have never seen it.
No, it doesn't. I carry a little portable one.
Yeah, I do not. And of course, with the Tesla, we can't use a portable power inverter because Tesla notices. The Chevy doesn't report.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah, people have run into trouble with their Teslas with hooking up an inverter to their 12 volt battery, where if you do that for too long, the car reports the load information to Tesla in such a way that the company can look and say, you're running an inverter. And there were issues with people who ran inverters during long-term power failures, like in Texas, who were informed that Tesla didn't want to honor in the future if there were problems with their packs, because that was off-label use of the car. The car's not meant to be used as a power source. That could compromise Tesla's willingness to warranty their battery packs in the future. Nikki is giving me a look.
Elon, sort it out.
I mean, look, I this is something I think is important to talk about because it comes up a lot in the context of Tesla. This just came up in the comments on the I think it was the Renault video, the Renault video, the Volvo video, where people are like, I really don't like that Tesla could, for instance, shut your car off if they wanted to, and that has, or et cetera, Tesla could remotely open your doors, whatever. And I think it's really important to remember that while we talk about Tesla a lot in the context of being highly connected cars, because it's something that Tesla promotes quite a bit, that they are highly connected cars, it's really important to remember that almost any car you're going to buy today for more than about $20,000 is going to have two-way telematics. It's something people want in their cars. And by two-way telematics, I mean, if you have an app on your phone from which you can remote start your vehicle, or check other information, and it isn't just an EV thing. I mean, the Hyundai BlueLink app we had for our Kona is basically the same app you had for a petrol Hyundai, just with a couple of different things in it. Same with the Chevy. If you
I just want to, carry on.
It is important to remember that although we talk a lot about Tesla in this context, most cars today, the company has access to, they say they're not going to do anything with it, but they have that kind of access. Most cars have two-way telematics. Tesla just was really at the forefront of saying, look how much we can do for you as the customer with our two-way telematics. Isn't that awesome? So people think about two-way telematics and Tesla in the same sentence, but it's something you see in almost any modern car.
So I just want to shout out to Otmar Ebenhook, who's in the chat. He says, it's just that the 12-volt BMS thinks that the battery's gone bad. Tesla is not intentionally blocking the use of accessories.
Interesting.
It just didn't account for it. And also just a shout to Otmar, he was one of two people, I think, who guessed what we were doing, because we were teasing people this week with what we were doing. Otmar got it right. Now, while we were talking, I don't know if you noticed, I changed some settings here in a Better Route Planner. And that's because after my experience earlier this year involving a certain charging station in Central California, which was offline and left me completely stranded, I don't like arriving at charging stations with less than 20%. And that's because if I've got 20%, the chances are I can get somewhere else to a level 2 or to some other charging station, and I don't have to worry about it, because at a push, I know 20% state of charge can give me maybe anywhere between 40 and 60 miles of real world range if I'm careful. And so I tweaked this to give me shorter legs, because I prefer stopping every 2 hours or so. And I sold it that I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to have less than 20% when I arrived. And interestingly, the difference in the trip is very minimal in terms of length. So it has now got me charging at different locations. And one of the things I really like about this, come on, I already have an account. Stop telling me to create an account. If I want to be even more conservative, I can be. But one of the things I like about this is, look, it's got me stopping with 32% state of charge, which is perfect. And I'm charging for 33 minutes, which again is perfect. Stopping with 30, charging for 34, again, perfect. Stopping at 20, charging for 26, and then stopping at 20 and charging for 43. So that last charging station is the long one.
Now, can I talk about something here that I think is really interesting and significant in terms of like driving a CCS car? I'm looking at your list, and we have EVgo, Green Lots, and EV Connect. I will confess, one of the things I really like about doing this in the Tesla is that I don't have to have, I don't have to be juggling 28 different apps for different charging providers. All I do is plug my damn car in every time I get to a charging station. And I have all those stupid apps because you're driving my car. But when we're talking about the trip, the CCS network is getting really good. I mean, Nikki talks about like having lots of options. We are doing like one of maybe 2 routes across the country where those options exist. I'm not saying you can go anywhere in America in a CCS car right now or a Tesla, because you can't, but it's gotten really good compared to what it once was. But in order to do this, like, it is worth noting that, you know, you're going to be, as Nikki would say, faffing around with a lot of different apps, and they don't all work the same. Like I know some NFC on my phone works. I can just put my phone near the charger and it goes, oh, you're connected. Others, I have to have an RFID key card, or I have to type in my information manually, or I have to do it on the app. I found like I had to charge at a Greenlots a while back. It was actually a destination charger, and you had to use the app, and it was in a parking garage that didn't have Wi-Fi service. Like I could, or didn't have cellular service. So I had to go to the parking lot office and ask what the Wi-Fi login was, so I could log into the Wi-Fi on my phone, so I could make the damn app work, so I could charge my car. And I was a bit salty about it. As Anonymous Freak says, like, plug and charge needs to be standard everywhere.
It does. And
that is, many more CCS cars are getting plug and charge, but even then, it doesn't tend to be across every network. It is an area where there needs to be improvement, and it is one of the areas where I feel like Tesla is still, I believe, as someone who owns a Tesla and owns a CCS car, I really believe that other manufacturers are very quickly catching up to Tesla. I think some manufacturers are actually eclipsing Tesla in some ways. And I believe that Tesla needs to keep innovating if they're going to maintain their position as a market leader. That said, I don't like the spread of the supercharger network. There are places where superchargers are still not available. And in some of those places, CCS is. But the convenience and reliability of the supercharger network and the interface as a driver is so much easier. Like, it's much like, you know, we tried to get my granddad to use an iPad because he was terrified of computers. If someone comes to me and says, like, I want an EV, but I'm really freaked out by charging, there are reasons, you know, for someone in that situation to say, right now, Tesla's the way to go, because the supercharger network is much easier and less involved to consider.
Although, as a counter to that, Electrify America has now got really darned reliable, and it's so comprehensive in a lot of the US.
Yes.
In some places, more so than Tesla.
My Electrify America experiences have not been consistently great in terms of the payment processing side of Electrify America.
Right.
Once I can actually get a station to talk to me, I've had decent experiences in Electrify America. Although where I live, I find that EA chargers are often very difficult if you don't have. When I had a nose-mounted charging port on the Kona, I really liked Electrify America. With the rear-mounted charging port on the i3 and the front side-mounted charging port on the Bolt, I find that I'm sometimes having to do some real contortions to make an EA cord reach.
That's interesting. I think I've just used Electrify America so much, I've just got it down pat now, just getting in. There are some quirks of the app, but once you know them, and if you have a membership, I found it very reliable.
You also probably have never tried to plug into an Electrify America station when there is a good couple of feet of snow in front of the bollards.
That's true. That's true.
Like that's something I've run into, is that like snow clearing just around charging stations in general can suck. And that's I had to charge at a Walmart, and in the end I had to turn my car sideways, block the other charging spaces which weren't in use, and drive sort of almost up onto the snow a bit to get to where a cord could reach. And it wasn't, it was only probably 2 feet of snow, but like those cords are so short.
I guess my experience of Electrify America is with plug and charge, it is super seamless.
Oh, I'm sure.
So if you have an Audi e-tron, you have a Ford Mustang Mach-E, or of course the upcoming Ford F-150 Lightning, you literally just plug in and the charging station does everything else. Just as a point, as a side note here, I've just replanned this route just using Electrify America charging stations, and it actually takes longer because you have to stop and account for some of the gaps that don't have anything else.
Anonymous
However,
Freak just pointed out, by the way, that EA cords are also very heavy. And those of us who've owned i3s in particular, although I've experienced in the Bolt 2, know that you have to really hold the handle
you do
until the communication is done and the locking mechanism engages.
right.
Otherwise
It will come out.
Yeah.
It will come out. So this is how we're using the Better Route Planner. If you want to have a more considered attempt and you're worried about charging in general, I always send people to ChargeWay, which is a program that allows you to use colors and numbers for your charging, and it literally tells you the higher the number, the faster the charge. And a little disclaimer here. ChargeWay is owned by a good friend of the channel, Matt Teskey, and I have worked with Matt before on producing content for them. One of the reasons we don't tend to cover, we don't cover ChargeWay. We mention them from time to time, but we don't cover them is because we've worked for them in the past. This video that's playing in the background here is actually a video that we produced for them. So that's a full disclaimer. But the way that their app works is it gives you an ability to display only compatible charging stations for your car, and the higher the number on that charging station, the more quickly you'll be able to charge. It also has a route planner that can allow you to plan your route. And if you are a complete noob to EVs, this is often the easiest because you don't have to worry about the name of the charging station. It just goes, yeah, this will work with your car. And I really like ChargeWay's setup for that. So just a quick shout out to them.
So we've been talking about DC fast charging. Do you want to talk about your decisions around destination charging?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had some really nasty experiences charging on road trips at destinations because I've stopped at hotels that are random and bizarre. I've had a good couple of experiences. So, for example, there's an independent place called Dunsmuir Lodge, which is in Northern California. It's basically like a mountaintop motel. They've got individual doors for everybody, but they also have Tesla destination chargers, and they also have a Tesla to normal car charging adapter. So you can use a regular car that has a regular charge inlet with a
You mean
Tesla.
a J1772?
Yes, yeah. Or ChargeWay Green, as they call it. And that means that you can stop and charge. And I've never had any problems with them. But there have been other places that I've turned to where places like PlugShare or the Open Charge database say, oh, yeah, there's a plug around the back of this building and you can plug in. And you end up having to take a NEMA 1450 charging station with you. Now, at one point, not too long ago, that was how you did it. That literally was how you did it. I've got a griffin saying hello from Pennsylvania. That just makes me sad. Because this weekend is Anthrocon weekend in Pittsburgh. For those who don't know, Anthrocon is a yearly pilgrimage for me. I love going to Anthrocon. I get to be a large giant animal for a couple of days. And now I'm sad that I'm not in Anthrocon. I'm not in Pittsburgh this week. But anyway, so you normally end up taking these massive charging stations with you and putting them in the back of the car. We can't do that with you on your trip because we're flying out. So that's not going to happen. But the other thing is I've stayed in some real dives of hotels over the years. And so I am using chain hotels. I am going to be staying at hotels that are owned by a well-known chain. The majority of them have charging stations on site. I don't have dogs with me. And as a queer person, I find that staying at large chains not eliminates, but reduces the risk that we're going to experience something negative towards us. And I think that this is something a lot of people don't realize, that when you are queer, when you are trans, and you are traveling across a country like America, your safety has to be part of the calculation. So I'm staying in major cities. cities. I'm trying to stay in major cities that are known to be fairly LGBTQ safe. There are a couple of places we're staying where that's not the case, but I'm staying at a major hotel chain that I know if anything was to happen, they would deal with it. I think that's probably the way I'll put with it. And I used PlugShare and a better route planner to find hotels that had charging.
So we tried that and we basically failed. So here's the thing. We're trying to do this on something of a budget. And what we discovered pretty quickly was that you can have hotels that are dog friendly. You can have hotels that have charging, and you can have hotels that cost less than $175 a night, but you really can't have all three. And we ended up deciding the Tesla charges pretty reliably at, a supercharger. We ended up deciding that if one of those things had to give, the thing we were going to let give was overnight charging, as nice as it would be. And we did do that in the context of like, how much extra are we paying to supercharge versus destination charge as well. And we still found that paying more for a hotel with destination charging, often a lot more. I mean, traveling with the dog complicates everything. Like there was a hotel we found recently that was $160 a night and had charging and was pet friendly. And we thought, well, that's great. But the additional pet fee is $180 a night just for the dog. And we were like, well, that's not going to work. And the reason that we made the decision to let overnight charging be the thing that we let go is because on the scheme of things, it was the thing that was least reliably going to be there. So for instance, we found a number of hotels on PlugShare that list themselves as having overnight charging. But when we called the hotels to ask, we were told that they did not. And I suspect that was not true. I suspect the clerk didn't know, but who knows? Or we found one hotel has overnight charging, but when we read PlugShare, because PlugShare is an amazing resource and people write about their experiences, there were a lot of people who are like, yes, it has PlugShare, it has overnight charging rather, but it's in the far back dark corner of the lot, and you don't necessarily want to park your car there if you have any valuables in it.
Right.
And I will say, there were places that we looked at where my husband said to me, like, if we were the ones driving the Bolt, I would stay there and I would charge, but not in the Tesla because.
Okay, so let's talk to me a little bit about that. That surprises me.
So here's the thing. I like my Bolt quite a bit. I wish the batteries didn't sometimes explode. And it would be great if it could charge faster. If they made a Chevy Bolt EV with 100 kilowatt or 120 kilowatt DC fast charging, I would be there all day. But I look at it this way. People roll coal on me all the time in the Tesla. It's never happened in a Bolt. The Bolt doesn't look like a premium car, and the Tesla does. I like the Tesla. I like how it looks. Ours is this sleek black, with the glass roof and the misaligned door trim. But it's a cool looking car. But if you put a Bolt and a Tesla Model 3 next to each other and say to someone, you can break into one of them, which one's going to have more valuable shit in them? Pardon me. They're going to choose the Tesla. And Owen was just like, I don't want to park my sleek black sedan, which looks like an expensive car. The Bolt looks like a car that costs 50 grand new, which of course it did, though we did not pay that. The Chevy does not look like a car that cost 50 grand new, though it did. And that was one of those things that, like, parking a little white compact hatchback in a sketchier place feels less dicey to us than parking our Tesla in a sketchy place.
I will say that's kind of one of the other reasons why we are kind of cooking on the road is because it means we spend as little time away from the car as possible, and without kind of putting myself in a bad position. The value of the gear that we are traveling with is significantly high enough that it causes concern. And we used to have a very comprehensive insurance policy for the company that basically covered our gear wherever it was in the world. And in the age of COVID, apparently lots of people suddenly had their stuff go missing. And so the insurance company changed the policy. And so now it's much more restrictive. You have to prove that a break-in occurred. And I don't really want to prove a break-in occurred with any of my stuff on the road. Thank you very much. So we're just going to stick around a little bit more comprehensively. Now,
there was real quick, before we continue, there was a question about heat waves and how heat waves would affect multiple charging, and asking if active cooling is enough. My experience, I have not charged in really high heat more than a couple of times. And my experience is that active cooling goes a long way during a rapid charge, even in really high heat. But these cars are also smart enough that if the active cooling isn't doing enough to keep up, it will start to throttle down the fast charging rather than let anything happen to the battery pack.
Who was that? Oh, the person asking that was the person I shouted out earlier for getting 6.5 miles per kilowatt hour in the car. I'm proud of that because I taught her to drive. So I like to think I had a part to play in that. She has a little Chevrolet Spark EV, and she loves driving it. And she's just one of those people who doesn't mind driving it in an efficient manner. It's not always about getting there straight away. Now, the other thing I wanted to say to you is that for women traveling alone or as a pair, even if you're not a couple, can be a little bit more risky than being on your own. I know that when we've stayed in a sketchy motel before, Kate, Walton, Elliot, myself, and Erin all sharing a room, we've all had that moment where we've gone, I don't feel safe here. And so that's the other reason why we're staying at slightly more expensive hotels. I mean, I want everyone to know we're not going on a jolly here. As one, we're using, we had some hotel points that we used from previous trips to buy an extra night at one stop because we want to go to Niagara. And then another stop, we're using some extra points to upgrade our room so we get access to a bath, because at that point we would have been on the road for 6 days. But I think that's one of the other thing, I once stayed in a hotel in DC where the door didn't really close properly and someone tried to open it in the middle of the night. And I learned a long time ago, you don't always go for the most affordable option. You go for the option that's going to give you a good night's sleep and make you feel safe. And that's worth a lot of money.
I think there's a point at which hotels, like tattoos and sushi, are things that you don't want to always go with the cheapest option available.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So a couple of other things. We've talked about cooking on the road. We talked about pets. We talked about safety. We also need to talk about some confusion among owners about what they can and can't use. In the last couple of weeks, I've been on Tesla forums, I've been on Bolt forums, I've been on other forums. People really don't understand charging. They just don't understand charging. And I think we are very insulated in our world where we think that everybody understands EV charging, but they don't. A lot of people just assume that EV charging is going to be the same as a gas pump.
So I think
I support ChargeWay, because it makes
one of the things that's really happened over the last several years is that we've seen this real shift in the electric vehicle owning community from people who were enthusiasts of some sort in terms of very into the technology, very into the more sustainable aspect, very into the sort of performance aspects. And that's, who were willing to say, I'm going to make sacrifices and I'm going to have to learn some new stuff and I'm going to, give up some things in order to have an electric car. And now I'm starting to see in owners forums, I'm starting to see people who are yep, went to the dealership, was thinking about what I want to buy, test drove this cool electric car and thought, sure, I'll buy that. So now I own an electric car. What can people tell me about owning an electric car? And to me, that's amazing. The idea that someone might just say, I didn't set out to go buy an EV. It just kind of happened. That's so cool.
It's cool in one regard, right?
I mean, I had researched the heck out of charging before my first electric vehicle, because my first electric vehicle was something that there was a lot of research and work and deliberation. Did I really want to go electric? What was that going to involve? And, that's not necessarily the trajectory now as EVs become legitimately more and more mainstream. And the education still isn't there on the sort of purchase side. If you buy a Tesla, you don't really always interact with a salesperson at all. And if you buy a car from a legacy automaker, my experience of salespeople selling EVs in legacy automaker dealerships has been not great in terms of their knowledge base. So you do start to have people who are literally driving an EV home and saying, like, I don't actually know how this works.
I've just done this route for my friend with the Chevrolet Spark EV. Because I know she'll get a kick out of that.
It's going to take a little bit longer, I'm guessing.
11 hours and 15 minutes. Not actually that much longer, as long as she can maintain 6 miles per kilowatt hour.
If you want to talk about the way that the DC fast charging infrastructure has grown, I don't think even a few years ago, you could have taken us an 80-mile EV cross-country relying on fast charging. Without using granny leads and level 2s.
All right, so let's talk about what we're taking on the trip, and then we're going to have to finish soon because I've got a butt ton of work to do, and in 12 hours I'll be wanting to get on the plane. And yeah, if you only manage 4 miles per kilowatt hour and you're in a Chevrolet Spark, you're basically boned.
I was going to say, do you get the little red line and the notice at the top of Better Route Planner saying that they tried really hard and this is the closest they could come?
This is the closest they got, yeah. And it's 23 hours and 32 minutes for that first leg. So I'm sorry you're stuck if you've got a short range EV. But look, I mean, it's... let me just share this so that folks can see it. It's kind of funny. This is for my friend who drives a Spark EV. If she manages 4 miles per kilowatt hour, but if she does the 6 that I know she's capable of, it's totally doable. As soon as you tell it that you can do 6 miles per kilowatt hour, which over the mountains in Western Massachusetts might be a little bit
dicey,
a little bit challenge. Oatmar says a local kid bought a Tesla Model 3, got home and realized he didn't know how to charge it and lives in an apartment. Fortunately, I provide a public charge point a block away. This is kind of the challenge that I think we're going to have with EVs. It strikes me as the same kind of people, and I'm going to talk about dogs for a second. It strikes me with the same kind of problem that people have when they buy a Border Collie. Those of you who watch the channel regularly will know that I am a huge fan of Border Collies. I have owned several Border Collies and lived with several Border Collies in my time. They are super smart, one of the smartest dog breeds out there, but they're also one of the most challenging dog breeds to own because they are so smart, because they are constantly on the ball, constantly thinking. And you have to be like 7 steps ahead of them at every turn. Otherwise, the dog will turn into a monster. And one of the challenges that we have, yeah, that was good timing there, Winter. One of the challenges with Border Collies is that you get people go, I really want a Border Collie. They're cute and they're fun and I want one. And then they get one because they're cute and black and white and they're just so cute and wonderful. And then people go, oh, my dog is behaving badly, or I don't know how to look after this dog. And it's the same thing about people buying a car without thinking about it first.
I was a Shiba Inu parent when the Doge meme happened. And we saw the same thing in the community of people who had Shibas, where, folk were like, the meme was so cute, I'll get a Shiba, not understanding that Shibas are like a primitive breed dog that are very difficult.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think there are many things that we see in the electric vehicle world that I look at as challenges in the electric vehicle world that are also legitimately good signs about the transition to zero emission transport. But in the short run are also like kind of problematic. I think about it from the comments. We have a decent number of viewers. I'm not trying to stir the pot, but we have a fair number of viewers who do not believe in anthropogenic climate change. And before I worked for Transfer Evolved, I'd seen this some, but it's really interesting to me. And on the one hand, it's aggravating as the person who moderates our comments. But on the other hand, it's a sign that like electric vehicles have gotten good enough that people who don't give anything about what their carbon footprint is are choosing to buy EVs just because they're great cars.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
really interesting to me.
All right. So we are doing this trip, and you and I could have done it very differently. We could have left at the same point.
Yep.
And we could have said, okay, we're going to race each other, but we're not going to do that. So let's talk about how we think the videos are going to turn out.
Okay, so we're going to use some standardization every day, well, every evening when we are finished driving. Both teams in our respective times and places will do a little catch up. We'll talk about how far we traveled, a bit about what we saw, what our distance was, what our consumption was, ideally a bit, how many kilowatts did we actually consume on the trip, and talk about what worked and what didn't, because I'm sure there are going to be hiccups. And then also along the way, as we see things that we want to see, we'll stop and shoot little travelogue vignettes. I'm expecting we're going to do some specific footage talking about charging. Like I think I hit like 2 V3 superchargers on the route. I'm kind of hoping I hit them at a low enough state of charge to get some real fun footage of those numbers spinning up really fast on my central display of the Tesla.
I think you might be able to get away with that. I don't think I could.
Well, I mean, look, Tesla also put a lot of thought into what it all looks like in a way that, frankly, Chevy didn't. So, like, the way that the Tesla, when you plug in and the numbers start to spin up showing how many miles you're putting on per hour. Like, someone asked me recently in a video about why we don't talk about miles per hour in the context of like how much charge is going into the car. You're in an hour, you would get 1,000 miles of range or what have you, if you could charge for a full hour. And we don't do that because that's different for every single vehicle. It's standardized across a vehicle of like how much power it can take in. If I have my Tesla Model 3 and an identical one, and we both plug in at the same time at the same state of charge, we're going to pull, a consistent number of kilowatts in charging. But our miles per hour of charging could be very different because it depends on what the efficiency we drive at is. So it's not they were asking it on the ID4 video. You talked about, you were getting X number of kilowatts, and why didn't you talk about how many miles you're putting on? And that's because every single individual vehicle is going to be different for that. But Tesla thought about it, knows it's a meaningless figure, but it looks really cool. And it makes you feel really good when you see it. In a way that Chevy just didn't.
I'm just looking here at the A Better Route Planner. I think it's decided to kill itself, which it does from time to time. And when you plug in stuff, if it's not quite right, it gets frustrated.
Speaking of plugging in stuff, do you want to talk about using this service with active versus, like, right now there's no active connection? So
right, so there's a little dongle.
My Better Route Planner for the Tesla, my Tesla's just connected to a Better Route Planner. And when I open up a Better Route Planner, it automatically displays information in the lower right-hand corner about my car. It has the name that we assigned the car, our Tesla's Glyph. And it'll say Glyph, and then it will tell me what my current state of charge is. And as I drive, I can use a Better Route Planner in a very active way where it's connecting to Tesla, and my car is connecting to Tesla, and Tesla is passing on information from my car to a Better Route Planner. Now, the Bolt doesn't have that, so you were trying to say you have a dongle for that.
Yes, I do, and I don't have my phone with me. I don't know where I left my phone. But I have a dongle that allows me to plug into the onboard diagnostics 2-port on my car, and it gives me the ability to read real-time charge data using an app for iOS, the name of which I am afraid I have forgotten. It then feeds that app data into a Better Route Planner, and then a Better Route Planner uses that to track in real time. If you've got an Android phone, one of these, it's a lot easier to do, but it does mean that you get real-time route planning and redirection if it gets to a point that your consumption is too high. It also has CarPlay options, so it will play on the screen in your car, so you can see in real time if you are using more energy than the car thinks, than the program, thinks you should. You can ease off on the throttle, or if you're using more, then you're allowed to do that as well. So there is also
in my case, we'll use a better route planner as our secondary, but our primary route planning will be through the Tesla app built into our car, which also, of course, will, say like, hey, we were going to go to that supercharger, but your lead foot means that we have to go to a different place now.
Right. This is beautiful. This is interesting, though. I've just told this to do it in an Aptera. And look at that.
Oh my word.
So once I get an Aptera, if I get an Aptera, that first leg that we talked about, Massachusetts to
there's
Buffalo,
no stops. It's just Boston to Buffalo.
Pretty much. I mean, there is a stop in just south of. Just
that's right. There's a little stop in Rochester.
Ithaca.
There's a stop in Ithaca. But still, that's an enormous leg.
And let me see, what's the reference consumption? And that's 6.74. So if I put that at 8 miles per kilowatt hour,
I was going to say, they
chime
up
closer
to 10,
to what they are. Let's do 9. And then batteries. Yeah. Okay. The 100 kilowatt hour, and we'll do that. This is using the Alpha Aptera car. So this kind of shows how much this is going to change.
If we had a timeline, Owen and I talked about, do we take the bulk buyback and just hold the money until Aptera is ready? And we decided that we didn't feel like that the timeline was clear enough for us to feel comfortable doing it, because I would love an Aptera.
Someone says, what do you think the chances that the Aptera will really deliver that sort of range? In terms of efficiency, I think it's going to get very good efficiency. Will it come to market when Aptera says no? I don't.
You're just going to flat out say no.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I will be really surprised if it actually gets out on time as promised. But I also think if it manages to do it, it'll be an incredible route.
So this brings up an issue for me that I think is one of the things we will be talking more about in the EV world, hopefully, and that is the issue of efficiency versus range. People in our comment section often conflate them, and they are not the same thing. So like I had someone say that the Tesla Cybertruck is going to be incredibly efficient because it has this very long range. And I was like, well, no, it's going to have a really big battery.
Yeah, the same with the F-150 electric.
Yeah, like I think that we are so focused right now on the fact that these are zero emissions cars, and that charging with electricity just doesn't cost all that much as a rule, that we've sort of drifted away a little bit from really talking about efficiency as a thing that matters to most people. Because when you start going to these really huge batteries, you do start to shed efficiency for range in a way that I think when we start talking more about affordable EVs, I think that efficiency is the pathway to affordable EVs rather than just a focus on range, because unless the battery costs come way down, I personally think the Hummer EV is a little bit gross. I mean, it's a Hummer, it's sort of be expected, but it just has, yes, it has a lot of range, and yes, it does 0 to 60 in 4 seconds in WTF mode, sigh. But it does that by having enough batteries to run, for the amount of materials that go into one Hummer's battery pack, you could probably put 3 more, conventional electric vehicles on the road.
Yeah. I'm just looking at this map and going, wow, if Aptera really manages to achieve this. I tell you what, this is the thing to Aptera as well, to the guys at Aptera. If you do manage to achieve 10 miles per kilowatt hour, and you come out with a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, and you lend me one, I'll do this trip and I'll prove it's possible.
Absolutely.
Because that's what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 charging stops
for to span a continent.
And that first one is Boston to Erie.
That's just, I mean, it's incomprehensible.
It looks like it might be Erie. No, it's the outskirts of Cleveland.
That's, I mean, the hope is that if they can make it happen and the car's carbon fiber sort of monocoque ends up being actually safe in crashes, which is what's been claimed, it could be a very, very cool vehicle.
Yeah.
Although someone asked in the comments the other day, how do you jack one up if you get a flat? And I did not have an answer to that question. I went back and I looked at a picture.
The front end can be jacked up fairly easily, and I think the back end can probably be jacked up too.
It's so rounded. It's like trying to jack up a boat hull.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's an answer. I don't one I could figure out from staring at it.
But the other thing to point out is that with an Aptera, you could legitimately do overnight charging.
Yeah.
Just overnight charging. So that first leg is 619 miles, which you could do in a day. And then you'd charge up overnight. It's only a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. You'd be ready the next day.
I like, by the way, Anonymous Freak just did the math that one modern Hummer EV is 15 Tesla Powerwalls. You could make 15 Tesla Powerwalls from one Hummer EV, which is just staggering. So we should talk about what you're bringing with you for this trip.
Yeah, and then we've got to finish so I can actually get the rest of this done. I'm also going to put Lightning, F-150 Lightning here with the extended range because I'm curious. So reference consumption, 1.61 miles per kilowatt hour.
That's gross.
I mean,
I get it. It's a huge truck, but it is... I mean, this is why giant pickup trucks are problematic, no matter what, turns their wheels.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what I'm bringing with me, in addition to the iPad here, and all of my editing gear, laptops, hard drives, I'm bringing 30 terabytes of hard drives with me because, why not? Actually, no, it's closer to 25 terabytes. I've got a bag full of GoPros for you. Some of them you're getting, because I think we should also reiterate we're not doing this trip the same time. So you leave about the time we arrive, and that's because my wife has next week off. So that was the time that worked for us.
I leave home about the time you arrive, and then I have a week in central Massachusetts because I'm seeing some family, and then I have a photography gig. I'm shooting a 3-day event in Rhode Island, and I'm literally going from shooting a 3-day event in Rhode Island, and the next morning I'm setting out for Oregon. So it'll be about 2 weeks before I actually hit the road for the cross country portion.
Well, this is interesting. This is the F-150 Lightning.
That is interesting. Those orange zones are places where you have to go below the speed limit, aren't they?
Yep.
In order to stretch the trip.
Now, it might be that there are charging stations along this route. There's one there. There's a couple. A Better Route Planner is basically going, I don't think you should stop and charge. Yeah. I know there's some in Des Moines. So no, you could do it without stopping. There would be blue. You just have to add two extra charging stops and you'd be fine. So that is a Better Route Planner being a bit of an idiot. But in terms of what we're taking a bag full of prep stuff for the car. So I've got a tire air compressor because you don't have one. I've got a level 1 charging station, so a granny lead, because you don't have a granny lead for your car.
I bought my car from Vroom, and a granny lead was not provided with it. Though they did require, because I traded in my i3, they did require that I provide the granny lead from the i3 when I traded in the i3 because it's something the car came with. And I thought to myself, surely so did the Bolt. But no, I don't have a granny lead.
Yeah, it's not. And I am also taking a camping stove. I'm taking a huge box of camera gear. I mean, like if you watch someone at a media people, 2 tripods, 2 cameras, lights, the whole shebang. Partly because we're stopping in Buffalo and we're going to be doing some filming there, hopefully. The whole trip for us is going to be about 8 or 9 days, but that's because we're stopping off at other places along the way, and that's not 8 days of travel. That's us stopping to do stuff.
We're detouring through Colorado, and I think it's going to take us 7 days with taking reasonable stops.
Yeah.
We could have done it faster, but our furniture won't be arriving in Oregon until, like if we did it any faster, we would arrive well before our furniture, and that just seemed deeply unpleasant. We're already going to have to sleep a day in an empty house here in Maine, and we're going to have to sleep a day in an empty house in Oregon. We didn't need to add more days of that.
No. So there you have it. That's pretty much the trip.
And then you're bringing an inverter as well. You're bringing an inverter.
I'm bringing a 12-volt inverter, partly because I need to be able to power GoPros in the car.
Yeah.
And also all of the camera gear requires a lot of charging.
We have the 1 kilowatt-hour battery for one of our e-bikes that has a USB port on it. And I think we may bring that with us in addition to our other power banks, just a full kilowatt of external battery for charging things.
Hans says, don't forget the tape recorder for when the mics inevitably fail. So what Winter's going to be using is something called a Road Rec, the Road Rec app, and he's going to be using the Smart Labs. And I've got a special thing for the Smart Labs that allow 2 microphones to be plugged into one phone. And you're going to be using that, and I'm going to be using, we've got wireless mics. So and we've got 3 wireless mics now because one of them failed when we did the Volkswagen ID4 video. You might have noticed there's a couple of points where the audio sounded weird. That was the microphone starting to go. So we've now got 3 transmitter packs and 1 receiver. So we're bringing all 3 of those. They have to go through, and I have to carry medical equipment on the plane, which is kind of fun. I have something, I don't know, is it here? Yes, it is. It's in the cool bag, which is also coming. I have to take this on the plane, which is normally it goes in the hold, but because we've got so much stuff, I actually rang up the airline yesterday and said, hey, can I take this as carry-on? And they said yes. For those who don't know, it's not a telephone. It looks like an old-fashioned telephone, but what it is a and it's not connected to the Wi-Fi right now because it's turned off. What it is, I'll see if I can demonstrate it, is you hold it over my chest. See if I can do it. It might not work. I really suck at doing this. There you go. You see it's now got a different color light on it. So this is now downloading data from my heart, basically. And this is for the heart monitor that I have in my chest. So I have to take this with me because at night time it sits by my bed and it basically dials up to the Borg mothership and sends off my data to be looked at by the Queen. So that's pretty much everything I'm taking. Thanks everybody for watching.
We're taking most of not that stuff. I think we're taking luck with us, I think is the hope. We're not bringing a tire compressor. We're not bringing an inverter. We will have the granny lead to the Tesla, though I don't know if we'll end up using it. And we will have, we may take our small, our 3.6 kilowatt EVS 1540 EVSE. Our big EVSE is going in the truck.
Yeah. Do you not usually transport that and carry on as a medical device? Yeah, I've never done it as carry-on before. I normally just put it in the hold.
You have way more faith in the hold of airplanes than I do.
Well, the thing about this is, right, if this was to disappear, I just need to ring up my hospital and go, so I need to come in to have my thing interrogated, and they have a thing that they walk over and interrogate it and stuff. So that's basically what happens. And my doctor has told me that when the battery dies in it, it'll just stay in there, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
Stay. So whenever I travel now, I mean, obviously when I go through security, I have a little pass and say, I have a thing. And sometimes they get funny with you and go, no, you can't. But I hope they do take it out. I think they may do because I've had to have biopsies before, and the last time they wanted to biopsy my chest, they said, there's something in the way. And I go, yeah, that's my heart monitor. And they go, well, we'll leave that there then. But it certainly beats having a pacemaker or an ICD. So that's useful. And that's the other reason, of course, why I am not driving flat out all the time, because I get dangerous after about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening. I'm not safe driving because my body doesn't really work well at that time of night. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching. Our trip. We ran over a little bit. We'll be doing stuff on the Twitters. Thanks to everybody who supported us today and sent us some pennies. You guys are rocking. That's definitely going to cover one night in the hotel. So thank you very much. And we will be doing some other videos while I'm away. I've recorded an epic amount of videos in the last 24 hours. I've slept probably about 6 hours in the last day. I think it was 5 hours before that. And tonight it'll probably be 3 hours on the plane. So please be patient. And 10 has been recorded already. So even if Tesla says if Tesla announces its Q2 deliveries, which I've just checked, it hasn't yet, it's not going to be published until I'm back, or till someone else is back. So there you go. Long distance trip. We'll see if we can arrive at both ends. And yeah, keep evolving, everyone. Take care. Bye. And we're out.
Awesome.
Sorry that was longer than it should have been, but
whatever. Did we
cover everything?
My head is in a super weird place today, so I hope I was not absolutely all over the place.
No, I think we were both a bit over it, so that's fine.